When we think of March 2011 in Japan, our minds immediately go to the tsunami. But today, we're going to tell a different story. We're heading hundreds of kilometers away from the epicenter, right into the heart of Tokyo, to relive the first 6 hours of chaos that brought one of the world's most advanced cities to a dead stop.
That's the sound from inside Japan's parliament building the exact moment the shaking started. That raw panic you hear in his voice. That's the feeling that rippled across the entire city at exactly 2:46 in the afternoon.
So what we're going to do is piece this all together using raw, real-time reports. We're talking about dispatches from newsrooms, accounts from office workers, what people were seeing on the street, all to reconstruct how this massive, modern city was completely paralyzed in just a few hours.
Okay, so let's set the scene. It's exactly 1446. The initial shockwave hits. And this wasn't some gradual rumble, you know? It was an immediate, violent jolt that millions of people felt at the exact same time. First, disbelief, and then real terror.
Think about that for a second. This came from a TV newsroom where reporters are supposed to be the calm voice in the storm. They could barely even stand up. They said the building was swaying so much, the ground itself felt like it was liquid, like you were on a ship in the middle of the ocean.
And if you think that's bad on the ground, imagine being way up high. This report came from an office worker on the 28th floor. They watched as these huge, heavy lockers just started sliding across the floor all by themselves. An invisible force was just shoving them around. I mean, that's a terrifying sign of just how powerful this thing was.
And this was the first number that flashed across the screens, a magnitude 7.9. Now we know today it was eventually upgraded to a mind-blowing 9.0, but even at 7.9, everybody knew this was something completely off the charts, way beyond any drill they'd ever practiced. So the shaking, which went on for minutes, finally stops. And that's when the next phase of the crisis kicks in. It's just this dizzying mix of confusion, trying to figure out what just happened, and this massive, instinctual reaction from millions of people. The second the ground stopped moving, hundreds of thousands of people had the exact same thought. Get out. So they just poured out of these swaying office towers and apartment buildings into the streets. And suddenly you have these huge crowds, and nobody's sure. Are we safer out here in the open or back inside a building that might be damaged? And the chaos just spread so fast. Within an hour, you've got parks like Shibuya Park totally flooded with people in helmets. Shinjuku, one of the busiest train stations on the planet, is completely cleared out, with these unbelievable crowds spilling into the streets. And then, you start getting these really strange reports, like the ground itself was failing. The parking lots at Tokyo Disneyland were turning into a muddy swamp because of liquefaction.
And this report from someone on the street is a reminder that the danger wasn't over just because the shaking stopped. The city itself, the streetlights, the glass windows on buildings, the signs, it had all become a threat. Debris was literally raining down on people below.
So the physical shaking was over, but the city's real crisis, this total systemic paralysis, was really just getting started. It's like the entire machine just stopped.
This became the central and, frankly, impossible question for the entire Tokyo metro area. I mean, this is a city that's built on constant movement, right? On the flow of people. So what happens when you just cut that flow completely?
Well, the answer was, you don't. The city's entire circulatory system was just severed. All the JR lines, the subways, the famous Shinkansen bullet trains, even the expressways, everything was suspended or closed. Tokyo was literally frozen in place. This quote from inside a train station is just so telling. It's 5 in the evening, 2 hours after the quake, but the electronic train schedule is still stuck on 14:55, the minute before it all happened. It was like time itself had broken inside these massive stations, which were now just halls filled with thousands and thousands of stranded people.
And here's where it gets really critical. The streets were so choked with cars and people trying to walk that even emergency vehicles, fire trucks, ambulances, they couldn't move. Their flashing lights were just another static dot in a citywide traffic jam. They couldn't get to where they were desperately needed.
As the afternoon started to fade, the true scale of the problem became terrifyingly clear. Millions of people had this dawning realization, I'm not getting home tonight. The long, uncertain night was just about to begin.
By 8:15 p.m., the crisis had officially shifted. It wasn't about the earthquake anymore. It was about the Koto-ku nanmin, the stranded commuters, or commuter refugees. And with this new reality, you start to see these really unexpected patterns of human behavior emerge.
And you really saw two sides of the human response at this moment. On one hand, you had this incredible discipline. In places like Shibuya, people formed these perfectly orderly, patient lines that stretched for blocks, just waiting for the few buses that were still running. But on the other hand, you had this frantic scramble. A run on bicycles started, with shops completely selling out as people looked for any possible way to make the long journey home on their own.
Yeah, the city's basic resources just vanished. Convenience store shelves were stripped bare of food and water. Major hubs like Shinjuku Station just pulled down their metal shutters, leaving thousands of people to sit on the cold ground outside. Official shelters were overflowing, and police officers who couldn't direct traffic anymore basically became walking tour guides, handing out maps to people who were about to start these epic journeys home on foot, 10, 20, sometimes 30 kilometers.
And this was the scene inside countless office buildings and government halls that night. The entire city of Tokyo had turned into this massive, sprawling makeshift shelter. People were sleeping on floors, under their desks, on flattened cardboard boxes, turning these symbols of modern commerce into dormitories for the stranded.
You know, the story of Tokyo's first 6 hours really shows you just how fragile our complex modern cities are. But it also reveals something deeper. When you look at those patient lines, the way people shared information, that quiet resilience, it really raises a bigger question. When all the technology and all the infrastructure we rely on completely fails, what are the human systems that kick in to hold a society together? And that, maybe, is the most important lesson from that unforgettable night.